I pretended to be unconscious in the hospital. You won't believe what my family said. Motionless on her hospital bed, Lila Harper pretends to be unconscious in order to hear what her family says about her after the motorcycle accident. But what she hears is not love and compassion, but a cold conspiracy. They want her dead to collect the $250,000 insurance money. What horrifying secret will be revealed, and what will Lila do to escape this cruel family? Lila Harper, 25, lay motionless on her hospital bed, feeling the faint heartbeat through the heart monitor beside her. The room was cold, with the bright white light from the window shining on her worn-out face, reflecting the image of someone who no longer recognized herself. The strong smell of antiseptic filled the air, making the atmosphere even more suffocating and silent. The serious injuries from the motorcycle accident had left her with broken ribs, a mild brain injury, and a broken left leg, making every movement painful. But she was still alive. The doctors predicted that she would recover. But at this moment, Lila didn't want to hear anything about recovery. She just wanted to know the truth her family was hiding. 3 days after the accident, Lila decided to pretend to be unconscious. She closed her eyes, her heart pounding not from the pain, but from the rising anxiety within her. She wanted to hear what her family would say about her, to know what they truly thought of her, and whether they had ever really loved her. When the footsteps drew closer, Lila knew the moment had come. Her brother Ethan and mother Margaret entered the room, but Lila remained silent, not revealing any signs of consciousness. She felt their gazes as they moved closer, their sighs betraying their exhaustion and tension. The atmosphere in the room became heavy, as if every word about to be spoken would strike her heart. This accident is a lesson for her. Margaret spoke first, her voice sharp. She chose to be a rescue worker, left a prestigious law school, and now this is the price she has to pay. She showed no sympathy, only cold judgment, as if Lila were responsible for everything. Ethan stood beside her, saying nothing, but his eyes were calculating. "That's right, Mom," he added in a low voice. $250,000 from her life insurance. If she doesn't make it, we'll have enough to pay off the debt and maintain the family's reputation at the elite club. Lila felt something inside her break. Her death, to them, was just a simple calculation, an opportunity to solve their financial problems. Her mother continued, "She really doesn't know how to value herself. Helping homeless people on Christmas Eve, paying medical bills for poor immigrant families. It's all just wasteful." Margaret said these words as if this was the reason for Lila to give up any hope for her family. Lila felt a pain so intense that she could hardly breathe. She thought she was doing the right thing, but never imagined being criticized like this by the very people she loved. The pain deepened when Ethan, with a cold expression, mentioned how the family had dismissed Lila's accusation of being abused by Uncle James. "Mom is right," Ethan continued. "It's just her fabrication, something she made up because she was jealous of James. She's ruining the family's reputation because she can't stand Uncle James's success." Lila felt as though her heart was being squeezed. These words were not only a betrayal, but a complete degradation. They had once been family, but now they were trying to push her into the darkness, denying everything she had gone through. Lila recalled the first time she tried to tell her mother about the abuse by James when she was just 12 years old. "It's just a misunderstanding, Lila," her mother had said, brushing off her words as if they were insignificant. "Uncle James just cares about you. That's normal affection between adults and children." Those words still echoed in Lila's head, making her feel unloved, unprotected, and not trusted. Lila, once a girl who hoped her family would understand and support her in tough times, now felt shocked and deeply hurt. She realized that not only had she been betrayed by her family, but they also saw her as a burden, something they were ready to discard for personal gain. Her death would be the only way for them to solve everything. The climax of betrayal came when Ethan and Margaret began discussing pulling Lila's breathing tube. "She'll pass naturally," Margaret said, her voice devoid of emotion. "We need to calculate carefully, make sure everything is settled." Ethan nodded in agreement, and they began calculating the life insurance and compensation from the motorcycle company. Even though the accident was simply due to black ice, Lila lay still, her heart shattered in pain. She forced herself to remain calm, not to reveal herself, not to let them know that she had heard everything. A sense of loneliness and agony overwhelmed her, but Lila couldn't let them see her weakness. She couldn't believe that her family, the ones she had longed for love and understanding from, could do this to her. However, in that dark moment, Lila realized one thing: she couldn't continue living in the shadow of this betrayal. Even though her heart was shattered, she knew she wouldn't let these lies and betrayals define her life. She had to do something, find a way to escape her family's cruelty. But how, when she was just a sick person lying in this cold hospital room, between life and death? Lila lay motionless on her hospital bed, the pain shooting through her body, but she couldn't move, couldn't speak. She felt each beat of her heart through the heart monitor, its steady rhythm a harsh reminder of life and death, of the life she had lost and what she was about to face. The hospital room remained cold, filled with the constant hum of machines and the whispered voices of her family around her, as though she were trapped in her own body, unable to escape the painful memories and cruel words. In Lila's mind, images of the past slowly began to flood back, memories she had tried to bury but couldn't erase. She remembered when she was just 7 years old, when Uncle James, whom she had loved as a family member, moved in with her mother and her after his divorce. At first, he was just a caretaker, someone who would look after her while her mother worked. But then, the secret games began. Games, he said, only she would understand. Lila didn't understand at the time, only knowing that the hugs, the kisses, and the intimate gestures made her feel uncomfortable, but she didn't dare protest. When Lila turned 12, she began to realize that those weren't secret games, but abuse. But she was too afraid to speak up. Every time she tried to open her mouth, her mother would tell her it was a misunderstanding and Uncle James only loved you. Those words felt like shackles tightening around her, making her afraid to cry out for help. Lila didn't know what rights she had to fight back, didn't know how to escape James's control. The abuse continued until Lila turned 18. It only stopped when she went to college, when she could escape, when she no longer had to live in the house full of lies and darkness. But the wounds couldn't disappear just because she left. She carried the haunting memories, the scars that would never heal. Lila sought therapy in an attempt to heal, but the emotional wounds ran too deep, too heavy. At 22, after many years of therapy, Lila decided to tell her family the truth. She went to her mother and her brother Ethan, hoping they would understand and stand by her. But their reactions stunned her. Her mother called her a troublemaker, saying she was just jealous of Uncle James's success. "You're just ruining the family because of your misunderstandings," her mother said, without a hint of compassion, without any sign of love. Lila felt as though she had been discarded once again, as the ones she trusted most turned their backs on her. When Lila discovered that James had abused her cousin Sophie, she could no longer remain silent. She reported it to the police, and the investigation quickly confirmed that James had abused multiple victims over the past 20 years. James was arrested and sentenced to prison. But this didn't bring relief to Lila's family. On the contrary, they cut off contact with her, viewing her as a destroyer of the family's reputation. The loved ones Lila once trusted now turned their backs, protecting themselves, leaving her alone with the pain of betrayal. As the family extended their involvement in Lila's life, the pain grew even deeper. Her cousin Claire, her husband Mark, Aunt Eleanor, Uncle Henry, and Father William visited her at the hospital. But instead of comfort, they criticized Lila. They talked about controlling her small apartment, filled only with secondhand furniture and local artists' paintings that she loved. They couldn't understand why Lila didn't want to live a rich life, why she didn't pursue the material values they had always sought. But the most painful moment came when they discussed declaring Lila mentally incompetent, or withdrawing her medical support to collect the insurance money. They didn't just want her dead, they wanted to profit from her death. Lila could feel the danger closing in, as though her life hung by a thin thread. Lila felt trapped, abandoned by her own family. She realized there was nowhere safe for her, no one to protect her, except for herself. The intense pain turned into determination, a resolve in her heart. She couldn't let them win, couldn't let them destroy her life. She wouldn't die for them, she would live to prove them wrong, and her life would be hers, not theirs. Lila had once thought family was where she could find love, but now she realized her family was not a safe place. She would have to protect herself, find a way to escape the cruelty of those she had once loved and trusted. She would find a way to live, to keep moving forward, no matter what. The hospital was still an invisible prison for Lila, its cold white walls seeming to tighten around her. Though she couldn't move, she could clearly feel the suffocation, as if each breath was being choked out of her. The steady sound of the ventilator, the beep of the heart monitor, and the hurried footsteps of nurses running back and forth were all she could hear. The feeling of being trapped in her own body grew more pronounced, and Lila knew she couldn't continue pretending to be unconscious forever. But then, a glimmer of hope came to her on a gloomy morning when Dr. Daniel Carter walked into the room. Lila noticed that the light from the window seemed softer, as if signaling that change was near. Dr. Daniel wasn't like the usual doctors who were hasty and impatient. He always took the time to care for each of his patients, always listening and showing special concern. Lila sensed that something was different when Daniel entered the room. He looked at Lila, then glanced at the heart rate monitor, where her heart rate suddenly spiked as her family began their conversation outside. It seemed they didn't notice the change, but Daniel immediately did. He walked up to the bedside, his gaze full of determination. "Lila," Daniel said gently, his voice like a comforting wave in the cold space. "I know you're awake. I don't want you to feel alone right now, but I need to talk to you." Lila didn't say anything, just silently looked at the doctor. She didn't want to lose this opportunity. With all the strength she had left, she listened to every word Daniel said. hoping that this was the last glimmer of light. Your family is plotting to withdraw your medical support, Daniel continued, his tone serious. They've made a medical power of attorney, and they intend to use it to remove your ventilator. I know you don't want that, Lila. I won't let it happen. Lila felt a shiver run down her spine. These words hit her like a slap, but they were also the very thing she had feared for so long. Her family was calculating her death to collect the insurance money. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. So, what should I do? Lila whispered, her voice weak but full of determination. I have nothing left to lose. Daniel looked at her, his eyes full of sympathy, but also filled with resolve. I've seen families exploit patients before, but I can't stand by and watch you be destroyed. I'm committed to protecting you, no matter the consequences. Lila felt the sincerity in his words. This was the first time she felt someone truly cared for her, not for personal gain, but for her. Trust began to spark in Lila's heart, and she knew that if there was a chance to escape this trap, Daniel was the only one who could help her. With a faint smile, Lila shared her dark past with Daniel, the years of abuse by James, the betrayal by her family when she tried to speak out. She told him about being dismissed by her mother, about Ethan and Margaret's cold words, and the endless arguments. Lila wanted Daniel to understand the whole story, not just because she needed someone to share it with, but because she needed a real ally. After listening, Daniel was quiet for a moment, then looked at Lila with a determined gaze. Lila, I think we can do something bold. You'll pretend to decline in health, to make your family think you're dying. If they withdraw your medical support, you'll die on paper. And that will be our chance to escape them. Lila felt a heavy sensation in her chest. She was standing at the crossroads of life and death, between fragile life and a dangerous choice. Could she trust Daniel? Could she risk everything for a chance to survive? Or should she continue pretending to be unconscious and face the risk of being controlled or even killed by her family? The truth was, Lila had nothing left to lose. She had once had a family, but now they were nothing but shameless enemies. Lila could no longer live under their oppression and cruelty. She had to take the risk to reclaim her life. Okay, Lila whispered, her heart full of resolve. I'm ready. Thank you, Daniel. Daniel nodded, offering a gentle smile, but in his eyes was a sense of unwavering determination. We'll do this together. I'll contact the FBI. They're already investigating your family for the insurance fraud, and we'll come up with a plan to help you survive. Lila felt a spark of hope begin to light up in her heart, but she also knew that the road ahead was full of risks and danger. However, this was her only chance to live freely, no longer afraid of anyone. The plan had been laid out, and Lila began to feel the change. She was no longer the weak girl from the past, but a strong woman, ready to fight to reclaim her life. The atmosphere in the hospital room grew more suffocating than ever, as if the very walls around Lila were slowly choking her breath. The sound of the ventilator, the rhythmic sounds that once seemed harmless, now became a brutal reminder of life and death. Lila felt every bone-deep pain, not just from the wounds on her body, but from the very schemes unfolding around her. She knew her life was being pushed to the edge, and the only person who could save her was Dr. Daniel, entering the room. Daniel quietly stood by the bedside, his gaze full of determination. Today was different from the others. Today was the moment when life and death were just a step apart. Lila sensed something unusual in his demeanor. She knew that if she wanted to survive, she had to trust him completely, trust in the plan they had set. And to Lila, that was like a gamble with no chance of turning back if it failed. Daniel turned to Lila's family, who were standing nearby, saying nothing but silently observing. Her mother, Margaret, with a cold expression, and Ethan standing behind, his face betraying his calculation, as if Lila's death were an opportunity for them to profit. But Daniel was ready. He took a deep breath and announced to the family, Lila is in critical condition, Daniel said, his voice steady, but with deep empathy that only a doctor who truly cared for his patient could express. Her brain is swelling rapidly. She needs emergency ventilation to sustain her life. Lila's family didn't immediately object, but Lila felt the tension in the air. Margaret, with a stern face, glanced at Ethan for a moment, then spoke with certainty. We don't need to do anything more. This is what Lila wants. She's suffered enough. Ethan stood there, his eyes cold, but the relief gradually became visible on his face. That's right. Mom, Ethan said, as if he had prepared for this moment. We'll withdraw the ventilator. Lila couldn't believe her ears. Her death was becoming a game, a decision made in a matter of minutes, not because she wanted it, but because of their benefit. Her heart ached, but she had to stay strong, pretend to remain silent, not letting them know that she had heard everything. When the ventilator was removed, Lila felt an eerie stillness, as if she was suspended between life and death. Her heart pounded, but in that moment, she stopped breathing. That feeling, even for just 30 seconds, was like an entire lifetime passing in silence. Lila couldn't breathe, couldn't move, but deep inside, she knew that if she couldn't change this situation, she would never live again. Her heart stopped on the monitor, and the sound of the heart rate monitor vanished. The entire room seemed to explode in the stillness. Daniel stood still, but Lila knew he was holding on to every last chance for her survival. "She's passed away," Daniel declared, his voice lowering, devoid of emotion or sorrow. Just the confirmation of a doctor with professional responsibility. "We'll proceed with the paperwork immediately." Lila's family said nothing, but they exchanged looks that couldn't hide their relief. Margaret's fake sobs echoed, but they couldn't conceal the sigh of relief. The family began discussing the quick cremation to avoid investigation. They talked about the insurance money and planned a small funeral to maintain appearances, making sure everything looked natural, as if Lila's death were just an unfortunate, unavoidable shock. Lila, though unable to move, could not shut off her mind. She heard everything, felt everything. She heard Father William whispering outside the room, his voice soft but full of satisfaction. "Now James can rest in peace." Those words were like a final blow to Lila's heart. They didn't just want her dead. They saw her death as a solution to their problems. Standing between life and death, Lila felt extreme fear, but in that moment, she realized she had to let go of weakness, had to overcome all fear to execute Daniel's plan. She had to live, had to reclaim the right to live, even if it meant giving up her old identity, even if it meant facing deeper pain than ever before. She was no longer the weak, broken girl. Lila had died on paper, but she had not truly died, and that was her rebirth. She would not let her family win. She would live to prove they were wrong, and this life would be hers. Lila began to feel the inner strength within her, the strength to let go of everything and live a new life, even if she had to start from scratch. The sunlight filtered through the lush green pine forests, creating shimmering rays that illuminated the peaceful atmosphere of the small town in Montana. The scenery here was completely different from the cold, silent hospital that Lila had endured for so long. The majestic mountains, the fresh air, and the vast open space made her feel freedom, the peace she had never known. This was where Lila would begin her new life. But she was no longer Lila. She had become someone else, someone completely new. Emma Grayson. When the body bag containing her was transferred to Evergreen Funeral Home, where Lila was presumed to have passed away, only Daniel and FBI agent Laura Bennett knew that she was still alive. Lila, now Emma, had stepped into a new life. No longer the girl trapped in her painful past. Everything was new, but the mixed emotions had not entirely faded. Laura Bennett, a resilient FBI agent, was the first to help Emma regain her freedom. Not only did she help Emma escape from her family, but she also helped her seek justice. When Emma first met Laura, she revealed that the FBI had been monitoring her family since they filed an insurance claim shortly after Lila's accident, and they had uncovered the fraudulent scheme and murder plot. Emma was shocked to learn that her family had been under surveillance for so long. She hadn't known they had become the subject of such a major investigation. "You're not alone," Laura said to Emma, her gaze steady but full of empathy. "The FBI has started collecting evidence against them. Ethan will be arrested, Margaret too, and James. James will never be pardoned." These words were like a sedative, helping Emma feel relief for the first time in years of living in fear. Emma's life in Montana was a rebirth. She was no longer Lila Harper. She had become Emma Grayson, a strong woman no longer shackled by the past. She worked as a helicopter rescue worker, living in a cozy log cabin, far from the hustle and bustle of the city, finding peace in the magnificent nature. This rescue work was not just a job, but a way for her to rediscover the meaning of life. Every time she saved someone, every time she brought someone out of danger, Emma felt that she was helping others, and from there, she found redemption for herself. The evidence of the cruelty and betrayal from her family had been gathered by the FBI. Ethan was sentenced to 18 years in prison. Margaret, 15 years, and other family members were sentenced to prison terms ranging from 5 to 10 years. Those who had once called her a troublemaker now had to face the consequences of their actions. Uncle James, who had abused her for years, was denied parole with clear evidence from Emma. She felt that some justice had been served, although it could never change the wounds she had endured. But this justice didn't stop at imprisoning the criminals. Daniel, the doctor who helped her escape the faked death, was also vindicated and continued his work helping abuse victims. What Daniel did wasn't just the job of a doctor. It was the medical oath he had upheld over the years. In this strange new place, Emma found new friends. Laura became a close friend, always ready to help her overcome the lingering trauma of the past. Laura understood Emma's pain and was always by her side whenever she needed her. Another friend, Ryan, a cheerful rescue worker, became Emma's confidant, even though he knew nothing about her past. He was the one who helped her see that life was worth living, the one who helped her see her own value. One of Emma's important moments came when she helped a young girl who had been abused stand up against her family. She made sure the girl received the necessary support to weather the storm in her life. This was not only an act of kindness, but also a way for Emma to affirm that she had truly changed, that she had become a strong person not only for herself, but also for those who were vulnerable, though she had started a new life. Emma still couldn't completely forget the past. One day, she received a letter from distant relatives. They apologized for misunderstanding her, for treating her poorly, but Emma realized she no longer needed that apology. She didn't need to respond to the letter. She understood that family truly were the people who stood by her, the ones she had found in her new friends, in those she helped, in those she loved. These people were her true family. Emma stood in front of the mirror, looking at her new face. She realized that she was not just a woman who had survived, but a woman who had become the best version of herself. She had chosen to live, and that was the greatest victory she could ever achieve. In the end, the case became a media sensation with the headline, "The Woman Who Overcame Her Family's Murder Plot." Emma's story inspired thousands of people, showing the strength of resilience and determination. Every rescue mission, every time she helped someone, was proof of Emma's perseverance, courage, and value. She had found herself again, and that was the most important thing. Lila's family had wanted to erase her, but they had inadvertently created Emma, a woman who could not be defeated, living to protect the vulnerable. The best revenge was living a meaningful life, despite those who once sought to destroy you.